Greetings, Facebook Live. Ben Axelrod, Bud Shaw, coming to you live from a much dimmer, much grayer downtown Cleveland, First Energy Stadium press box. Just a few minutes removed from the Cleveland Browns' 43-13 loss to the Tennessee Titans to open the 2019 season. Bud, when we started this earlier, when we did our pregame show, I said this was not like any other season opener you've probably covered. And it turned out it was well, it was a lot like a lot of them, and then it turned out it was way worse than any of them since, at least from a score standpoint, since the 1999 opener against the Steelers. I did not see that coming.
No, I didn't either. And listen, I'm kind of laughing a little bit just because I don't even know what to say, right? Matt pointed out when we first sat down that he had never seen, for a long time now, he hadn't seen the stands that full at the beginning of a game, and yet we saw at the very end of the game it looked a lot like we've seen it here in so many games past. It was maybe the worst debut in my memory for a Browns head coach.
Yeah, I mean, when you factor in these were unprecedented expectations for this team, at least as far as the Browns post 1999 are concerned, and to come out there and to lay an egg in the way that they did. There have been other season openers where they lose and you feel like the season is lost because you're aware of the talent on the roster and you're aware of the circumstances. So I guess if there's a saving grace with today, it's that you still feel better about the talent on this roster, although that offensive line is really leaky and it's really thin, and the defense, the worst fears about the personnel behind the defensive line, I think those were kind of realized today. I don't think it's doom and gloom for the rest of the season, but I think all the negatives that we pointed out before the game, I thought a light was shined pretty bright on them today.
Yeah, I think in the post game, Freddie Kitchens was clear in saying that he didn't think there was that his players bought into the hype, and I tend to agree with that. But this game will make sure that they don't now, that they won't start thinking that they've arrived before they really have. I mean, this was, I don't know how, I mean, this is humbling. You can't start a season like this and not walk off the field and I don't want to say start questioning things, but at least it's one of those moments where it gets your attention, or you're not going to be very good if it doesn't.
I think the tough part about it too is you look at the first half of the schedule. It's a front-loaded schedule in many ways, and this was one of the opponents that you would look at and say, if the Browns are as good as we think they can be, they should beat the Titans. They should beat the Titans at home in that season opener. The Jets I don't think are as good as the Titans, but that's on the road in a primetime game. After that, they host the Rams here, and then they play the Ravens. I mean, this was, of those four games, this was probably on paper the most winnable game, and to lose in that fashion, that to me raises more red flags than anything else.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. You kind of lose track of what they have to deal with over the first 8 games, and there's going to be a lot bigger challenges than the Tennessee Titans on that schedule. And this was one that you thought, even when it was 13 or 15-13.
Safety screws me up.
Me too. Even when it was 15-6, I thought, as badly as they've played, they'll still have time to come back, and certainly they did. I think the difference during those 2 drives that they had, one to start the game and then one that made it 15-13, you saw what this offense could be. I mean, Baker Mayfield had a great throw to Landry, kind of a back shoulder throw down inside the 5. And you can tell they're going to be a really tough team to defend when they stop killing themselves with penalties. The penalties were alarming in the way that they happen, not in just offensive line holding because they might be a little overmatched, but also in guys just losing their cool and Greg Robinson getting himself kicked out of a game. That was really bad.
Yeah, it's almost tough to evaluate what this team was from a football standpoint today because of the penalties, and that's not to say that the penalties are
182 yards.
Yeah, right? You're not going to get that every week. Now, they might be one of the more undisciplined teams in the NFL, and based on this game alone, it's probably going to skew their rankings as far as penalties are concerned. But they were never in, aside from those 2 touchdown drives, never in any semblance of a rhythm offensively. Defensively, it hurt them as well and helped extend drives for Tennessee, but it felt like we didn't even watch like a full football game from this Browns team today.
Yeah, and we saw some of the things that people were a little concerned about, right? With the missed extra point right off the bat. The Scottish Hammer's first punt was a little short, and you got a fortuitous bounce, but he had a pretty good game in the end. But the offensive line, I think, is, and you said it in the beginning when I asked you, did they have a right tackle or right guard problem or an offensive line problem, and you correctly identified it as an offensive line problem, that I think is only going to get worse. I mean, unless you can fix this on the fly by bringing somebody in, I don't know what else you do now.
Yeah, that's. I mean, you saw their worst fears were realized where Greg Robinson gets kicked out and Kendall Lamb gets hurt right after that. I didn't feel great about Kendall Lamb in the first place. He gets kicked out. They bring in Justin McCray, who's a guard who they just acquired from Green Bay. They had 2 offensive linemen and Wyatt Teller and Austin Corbett inactive. I mean, this is the depth on this offensive line or lack thereof is a real concern, and that was certainly realized today.
Were you surprised to see the 2 offensive linemen inactive on this?
Yeah, Teller especially because they brought him in here, and I think people expect him to ultimately wind up the starting right guard. So to have him inactive and not be in a situation where he can get out on the field, I thought that was surprising.
The other thing that I did, and Matt and I talked about it at halftime a little bit, and he made a point of right in the beginning of the third quarter, in a really tight first half, they only carried the ball, they only ran the ball 8 times, and I think that's more Freddie trying to figure out, like, how he keeps saying, don't worry about it, I'll get these guys the ball, they'll get enough balls. I think it was him trying to make sure. Well, I mean, certainly they wanted to attack him through the air, I'm sure, but I just think I think Chubb is such a terrific back that I think that was a little short-sighted not running the ball a little bit in the beginning.
And I thought it was almost curious, and this is not on the list of anything that was wrong with the Browns today because it was a play that ultimately resulted in a touchdown. But they get down to the goal line and they take out Nick Chubb for Dontrell Hilliard. It wasn't a drive where Chubb was racking up some sort of toll on his body or should have been gassed or anything. It almost seemed like Freddie thought he was in a position where, okay, I can get Dontrell Hilliard his touchdown here, his first NFL carry. It's going to go for a touchdown. Same thing happened. They get down to the goal line and they go backfield empty. And it was just kind of curious. I thought, they have 2 plays really for all intents and purposes within the red zone, and Nick Chubb doesn't get the touch on either carry.
No, I think that's a good point. I mean, Freddie's the one that's told us, that he's old school and that you got to be able to run the ball when the other team thinks you're going to run it, and you got to be able to block and tackle and all that stuff. And yet, it seemed like he got away from that a little bit.
Baker Mayfield, not one of his worst performances since being drafted.
You think it's the worst game you've seen him, right? I mean, other than
that might have been an overreaction in the moment, but I can't remember. Maybe Houston last year in the first half
against Houston was probably comparable.
Yeah, but that was, aside from those 2 drives, totally ineffective, and not just the interceptions, but there were some drives that just stalled out, or drives where he made poor decisions that didn't result in an interception.
Also, I thought he held onto the ball a couple of times way too long, and now we don't see what he sees. Maybe there was good reason for that. I think, in fact, there was defensive holding on one of those. But he's going to have to, if we think he's the guy who's going to have to prop up the offensive line by getting rid of the ball faster, he didn't do that today.
I think the encouraging thing with Baker is that he does have a track record to fall back on. The concern is, you mentioned this being Freddie Kitchens' debut. He doesn't have a track record, at least not as a head coach, to fall back on. So right now we're dealing with a 1-game sample size, and it's not a good game. They go to New York next week on Monday Night Football. Then they come back here to host the Rams on Sunday Night Football. That's going to be an interesting atmosphere here if the Browns don't get it done in New York next Monday night. Yeah,
I think we've all kind of looked at this beginning of the schedule and thought, what is this town going to be like if they get off to a 1-3 start or a 0-4? I don't think that's going to happen. But listen, I don't know if fans will feel comforted when they hear Freddie say, it's only 1 game. Yeah. The world's not coming to an end. But he is right. And because they have the talent that they have on both sides of the ball, you can see them getting out of this, correcting whatever they needed to correct penalty-wise and getting out of it. I mean, I don't think there's any reason to think that they couldn't go into New York and win a game, and then everybody will feel a lot better after that, right?
Certainly, and that's, Freddie has said before, this team, despite all its talent, is going to hit adversity, and how it deals with it, that adversity is going to, reveal the true character and all those other cliches about revealing character and whatnot. It is, though, a little bit alarming that those quotes now are being reused in after week one. Now we're at what happens if the character is not revealed to what you wanted it to be revealed. I don't think we're at a fork in the road here with this season, but it does certainly, I think, alter the kind of paradigm through which everyone views this season moving forward.
Yeah, I think sobering would be a kind way to put it.
Yeah.
I didn't see many people.
I think it might have been literally sobering for some people.
Well, that's a great point based on what I saw walking in here. So, again, if there were Baker Mayfield gets tackled in the end zone and comes up kind of with a bad shoulder, something's going to have to happen to him to convince me that this team still isn't capable of going to the playoffs. I'm sorry. There's just too much talent on the field, and I know it always doesn't translate immediately to success, but I think eventually it will in this season.
I think we're obligated contractually to mention Odell Beckham Jr. because we haven't mentioned him yet. 7 catches for, I think, 71 yards. Wearing depending on which website you're looking at, wearing a $200,000 watch or a $350,000 watch. You can tell he moves differently out there. He certainly is electrifying and all that, but really kind of a ho-hum debut.
Yeah, I mean, I still want to hear more about the watch. I'm very curious as to why.
Doesn't seem practical.
It doesn't seem real practical, but they didn't get him because he's a practical receiver, right?
That's very true.
I mean, I think we saw Baker Mayfield try to force one into him late in the game, and you understand why. Here's a guy that can turn any catch into a touchdown. So, again, I wouldn't want to make too many rash conclusions about what happened here today, but certainly you just like to see these people get rewarded for this. The excitement that was in this place when this game started today, and to have it end the way it did is it's cruel and unusual punishment.
Yeah, I think back to the 2008 season, coming off that 2007 season with all the hype and the expectations, and they got off to a really slow start, and the season just kind of fizzled out. I don't think that's going to be this season.
Like a 5-11 season, was it? Or?
Yeah, I mean it was our 4-12. 4-12. Romeo gets fired after, and everything changes from there. I don't think it's going to be like that, but like I said, it definitely changes the way you view this thing moving forward.
And listen, I know it looks terrible for Freddie Kitchens to walk out and have a game like this as his first game as head coach, but we've talked before about the fact that they have very seasoned offensive and defensive coordinators on this team. So if they were out here as a young staff filled with a bunch of guys from college, I think there would be more concern that, maybe they can't get out of something like this immediately. But I think that they can based on the guys they have as coaches in this team.
Yep. And we will see 8 days away from Monday night against the New York Jets in the Meadowlands. We will have you covered on
Gotta be better.
I don't think it can be worse. So we will have you covered on WKYC.com throughout the night, throughout the week, and leading into next week's game and throughout the season. So for Bud Shaw, I'm Ben Axelrod. Thanks for watching on Facebook Live.